Okay. All right. This good evening, everyone. My name is Claude Sharati from Africa Media Australia, and on this special edition of AfroShan Live tonight, I will be having a conversation with four senior African Australian lawyers. This is part of the Law Week. For those of you who may not be aware, there is a Law Week that happens in the month of May, and I suppose it is a week during which people are encouraged to learn more about the law, to learn more about their rights, and to meet people who may help them to resolve a number of disputes in their life. We live in a society that is democratic, where there is the rule of law, and in many aspects of our lives, whether professional, family, or any other area, often the law is always connected to these things. So it's important to know where you're standing, especially when you have issues, but not just because you may want to prevent actually yourself having issues, and knowing the law is a very important thing. So I'm going to introduce the guest that I have tonight, and I'll ask each one of them to tell us a little bit more about themselves. I will start with Raviro Nzenza. Raviro, how are you today?
I'm doing very well, Clive.
All right. Tell us a bit more about yourself so people know who you are and what you do.
Okay, I actually have a law practice in Footscray. That's where I am, the hub of African people. I'm specializing mainly in immigration and family law, but my practice is general, and I do have a lot of clients with other legal issues that they may have. Usually either I handle them or I can refer them to my other networks. But my main practice area is immigration, family, and all the other general issues that my clients may have.
Okay.
Pretty much what I do.
All right. Thanks very much, Raviro. We'll come back to you in a moment. Now I'll go to Adil. Adil, how are you today?
I'm fine, thank you.
Sorry, Kimani Adil. Sorry, Kimani Adil Boden. Sorry, I need to get the name right. I don't want to start with that, getting the name wrong. Go ahead.
Yes, like Raviro, I'm a general practitioner. I'm based in Doncaster. My office was previously in Brunswick. Had an office there for about 15 years. Started practicing back in 1997, initially with Legal Aid, and since 1999, I've been operating my own firm. 30% of my work is probably in criminal matters, then 30-40% in family law matters, and then civil litigation. So my firm is really basically geared in litigation matters, all types of magistrate, county, Supreme Court, contractual disputes, small percentage of personal injury matters as well. I've got 2 lawyers that work with me, and yeah, that's what I do.
Thank you, Kimani. Let's go to Ike. Ike, how are you today?
Clyde, thanks for having me. I'll start by talking a bit about me personally. I'm a father of a 13-year-old daughter. Obviously, I'm a husband, and I'm a brother to 4 siblings. And last of all, I'm a son. I am a public safety lawyer, otherwise known as a public liability lawyer. And my work essentially involves acting for people who have suffered injury as a result of negligence of others. So it's a very broad area of law. It covers any injuries sustained in a public place. So it can include assaults, it can include slipping in a shopping center or a supermarket, it can include diving cases, maltreatment in nursing homes, you name it. It's a very, very broad area of law. I've worked for Slater and Gordon for 26 years. I'm a practice group leader and I manage a team of 30 staff.
All right. Thank you very much, Ike. And let's go to Macaire. Macaire, how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. Good evening. My name is Makay Mayak. Just like Kimani, I'm a generalist practitioner. My practice is based on is in Footscray on Hopkins Street. I've been doing that for 2 years. Generally, I've been a lawyer for the last 10 years. Started my practice 2 years ago, and the main areas are generally civil litigation, commercial litigation. I dabble a bit in family law, about 20% or 30% in criminal law, migration matters, and generally anything that comes before through our door as a generalist practitioner.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. And again, I want to say really thank you for coming to the show. I know you lawyers are very, very busy, one of the busiest professions, but you found the time to be with us. We appreciate that. Now, it's Law Week. Can any one of you tell us why was Law Week set up in the first place?
I'll give it a go.
Yeah.
Well, Law Week is essentially an opportunity for the public to learn about the law and to learn about different areas of practice. And it involves lawyers providing free legal advice. So it's a way of connecting with members of the public and enabling them to see what is involved in the law and to have their questions answered. And so often what happens is people will dial in or connect with a lawyer and they will give them normally about 30 minutes free legal advice. But it's a way of, I guess, demystifying the law to the members of the public.
And that is absolutely very important. Now let's go into the community. We're starting to see a lot more African Australian lawyers. I mean, I came to Australia 21 years or so ago, and I didn't see many lawyers. Right now, there are quite a few. That's a very good development. Kimani, maybe tell us how do you read this growth and increase of African Australian lawyers?
Yes, I think it's an excellent development. And in fact, I remember when I started properly, Ike was one of the only African lawyers that I knew at that point in time. And as you say, there's now many young African lawyers coming, African Australian lawyers. And it is good because what I still find in court quite often, there is this disconnect or this lack of capacity that some other lawyers or even judges have when trying to put themselves into the shoes of young African members of the public or families. And so having African lawyers is good because their concerns can be better communicated. And that's what the law is about at the end of the day.
Raviro, what's your take on that?
Well, I actually do feel like what Kimani has just added on, having so many African lawyers does help the Australian legal system to actually represent the Africans, because we are a growing population as well, and we do have legal concerns. And having many African lawyers who actually understand that demographic population of people within the wider Australian community, it is very vital, because we do have, examples where after court appearance, the judge will say, "Thank you, Ms. Nzenza, for helping the court to resolve the matter," because there were issues that without myself as an African appearing on behalf of an African person who actually, I see, will become like a bridge between the courts, the African people with their legal issues. We can articulate them in a way that they are better understood in court.
Thank you very much for that. Let me just remind our viewers out there that we do want this show to be quite interactive. So we would encourage you to make comments and ask questions. We'll put these questions to the panel and get them answered. If you can do that, you can do it via text on Facebook or YouTube. You can also call in if you want, but also if you want to be on video, make a comment or ask a question on video, you will need to send us a text. We'll put the number on the screen. Makeo, let me go to you. What inspired you personally to go into law profession?
Firstly, probably it's a lack of nothing else to do, because I think I was more in school. I think the subjects that appealed to me more were the humanity subjects, which I was good at. But firstly, let me go back a little bit to my personal upbringing, where I grew up in a war-torn, what used to be the Sudan back then, and from the southern part of Sudan. And by then, I had not known anyone who was a lawyer. None of my family members had been a lawyer or had graduated from university. My dad was a principal of school, went to join the army, was killed when I was about 5 years old. And then, so we were left to be taken care of by the mother. But so my mom used to, because I was a little bit argumentative when I was a child, I think a little bit more stubborn as well. So my mom thought, because she had, you know, she had studied, she'd gone to primary school, and she would call me Maulana, you know, an Arabic name, which means a lawyer, which I only came to find out a little bit later on. And when I asked my mom why she called me that and what it really meant, and she said it was for a lawyer, and I asked her what that really meant, and she said were people that defended the rights of others, and that is sort of stuck with me. So plus my personal abilities as a person, my personal abilities are in persuasion, being able to argue a point, being able to fight for others. So that sort of background plus personal ability sort of propelled me to becoming a lawyer. So when I had the opportunity to go to school, the subjects that I were particularly good at were the humanities subjects. And so, long story short, when I came to Australia, went straight to year 12 because I think I would have been around 19 years old when I came.
If you can speak up a little bit, Makeo, so we can.
You can't hear me?
We can hear you, but if you can speak up a bit, it'll be better.
Yes. So when I came to Australia, I was about 19 years old. So I went straight to year 12, and I soon discovered I was good at humanity subjects. And so I did legal studies, advanced English, and so forth. So did my HSC, and then the only course that I applied for was the Bachelor of Arts and Bachelor of Laws. There was no second option, and that's how I got into law, basically.
Okay, thanks very much for that. Now, I know your clients, for all of you, your clients are not limited to African communities. You work with all types of clients. But what do you think within the African community that people actually who need lawyers are actually going to lawyers when they need them, or they tend to sort of be forced to go to the lawyer when they have to?
I think there's a general lack of understanding and where people are supposed to go to, particularly I come from the western part of Melbourne, and my practice is in Footscray, and often you would distressed parents or mothers or fathers would call you and said, I've got a problem. I need assistance. So more often it strikes me that people do not really know where to go, and it's been a huge concern because I think people generally do not understand
Seek legal advice.
Yes, the people do not understand their rights, and I think that's still really prevalent within the African community, and it's a really a major concern, particularly to things to do with civil matters. Civil matters are a major concern. Criminal matters, generally speaking, somebody would be charged by the police, and you would be forced in one way or another to have a legal aid lawyer defending you or to seek legal advice. But when it comes to civil matters, people are completely not aware of where to go. Property matters. Most of Africans are buying properties now. A lot of people are getting themselves into loans that are not sustainable. Their properties are being taken off them, and they get threatened by brokers who tell them that there's no way out when there's clearly a way out. People are buying cars. People are buying other things that make life worth living, and it's just a problem that most of Africans there in the African community do not know where to go.
All right, thanks very much. Let me remind. Yep.
Sorry,
you want to make a point? Go ahead.
Sorry. If I can just add, even in particular, unfortunately, a lot of our clients and African clients, when it comes to civil matters, they come at the end when the dispute is already there. Where, as Macaire says, if there was more education and there was some planning at the start before they get into the joint business venture or they enter into the agreement, the problem wouldn't be there 6 months or a year or 2 years down the track. And I think education is important there. So rather than waiting for the problem to arise, with a bit of planning and strategizing, some proper agreements at the start, a lot of problems can be avoided. And there are many cultural issues as well in terms of oral agreements, things not being documented, matters of trust. And what I have found over the years is that where in the past a lot of business was done on a handshake, now even within the African community, perceptions are changing, commitments to those handshake agreements are changing, and it's even becoming more important to have it documented, because you've got this difference now between the old generation and the new generation, where maybe the old generation did things on a handshake, and the new generation, they're now educated in Australia, they do part on a handshake, part on documentation, and that's where I think education is very important.
Ike, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I can certainly speak from a personal injury point of view, because that's my area of specialty. A lot of clients within the African community, and I've represented a few, but considering that there are a lot of people within the African community that work in factories and who suffer quite nasty injuries, a lot of them don't tend to want to take action against their employer for the fear of losing their jobs. And also they find it difficult to engage with lawyers such as the firms that I work with, because they think it's going to be too expensive, not going to be able to afford to go to a city law firm. But little do they know that for personal injury cases, we do not charge any upfront fees unless we get compensation. So payment is made at the end. And so it is about education. It is about ensuring that members of the community understand that they do have rights. And, the fact that they think that, that it might be expensive, etc., should not be a deterrent to them seeking legal advice, because certainly in my firm and most personal injury firms, there is no upfront fee to act in a personal injury claim. So that it is recommended that they seek legal advice as soon as an injury occurs, because there are also time limits within which to bring a claim.
Yeah, that's very good. Absolutely. People have to seek advice in a timely manner. Raviro, what's your experience? Do you feel like people always come sort of at the end of the process rather than at the beginning to prevent issues where they will end up being really penalized or suffer more detriment?
Definitely. Education is a must in the community. I've come across some heartbreaking cases where I say to myself, my goodness me. I'll give you an example of one case that I had. A single mom had raised, enough deposit to purchase her home, and she signed a contract, purchase of sale contract, without, being advised by a lawyer before she signs. When she came to me, she had already signed the contract, and it was far too late. The settlement was the following week, and the bank hadn't even given her the finances. So evidently, she was in breach of contract, and she lost the deposit of about $50,000. Had she come to see a lawyer before she signed that contract, obviously she would have got the advice for a very minimal amount of money, rather than losing $50,000 by the end of the day for breach of contract. So that's just one example. People don't know. They think they're saving money for not going to see a lawyer, but they are actually getting themselves into more trouble.
Yeah.
I'll just give you another example in my other area of practice in immigration. What I realized that people don't know that once you've got an immigration record, the department do have your history well documented, and when you try to make subsequent applications, that information is actually matched with what you are putting in right now. I've seen clients who have actually had their visas cancelled for putting information that's conflicting with what they've already conflicting with what they initially submitted.
Yes.
Or they may have come under a different kind of subclass visa as an orphan, and later on they are wanting to bring their mother, but it came as an orphan. They can't see the link between what they did previously and what they are doing now. The consequences can be quite, harsh. So I would advise that it's very important to at least seek legal advice before you take any action, especially when you are dealing with these major things that matters in your life. I would say education is really important in our community, to just let people know what to do.
Okay. And then how do we achieve that education?
Could I just add one further point Revero made, where she talked about the person losing $50,000.
Yeah.
It's very important that members of the community understand that even if you are in breach of a contract, still seek legal advice, because a lot of contracts can be set aside on the basis that they are unconscionable, especially if the person that signed the contract does not understand the terms of the contract. And, there are a lot of members within the community that English is not their first language, and it hasn't been fully explained to them. So it's very important that they still seek legal advice, even though, it may seem that they don't have a case because they've signed the contract. Still seek legal advice and, find out whether or not the contract can be set aside. You got nothing to lose.
Absolutely. Before I go back to any of you, let me remind our viewers, please, we encourage you to ask questions to our guest. We want this show to be interactive, so don't hesitate to ask your questions. Now, Kimani, what's the best way to educate people on the need for them to not only know their legal right, but take the proper action, both at the beginning of whatever relationship they're building, whatever business or deal they're getting into, rather than towards the end where things are pretty nasty?
Well, I think what's important for the community in particular is that they have to know that there is access to lawyers. We've spoken about there being many more African lawyers now today that weren't there in the past. So we have to make ourselves accessible. In my firm, for example, I have a policy for the last 20 years where if somebody comes, we don't charge for the first interview. And that's because we want to assess, can we assist? And at the end of that interview, we don't put a strict time limit on it. So we don't say half an hour or 40 minutes or 1 hour. We simply assess the situation. If we can help, we tell them, and then we can take it from there. We talk openly about what the fees involved would be. If we can't help, we tell them as well. Or if we have to point them into the direction of a specialist who can handle the matter, we'll do that. So I think it's important to be active within the community, and it must be known that there is a lawyer that people can go to. In my situation, I'm known amongst, for example, many taxi drivers. Many of those have been my clients over a long period of time. They speak amongst each other. And so they understand, okay, if we've got an issue, we can just call Kimani or we can come and see him. He won't charge us. He'll give us some advice, and it can be taken from there. And I think the point that Ike made is very important, that to a lot of members in the community and the public in general, not only African Australians, but even Australians, seeing a big law firm, they are worried that, look, if we go there, we will be charged a lot of money. So there should be the understanding within the community in particular that there are lawyers that they can see who will not charge initially and who will give them some advice and some guidance.
Thank you very much for that. Michael, let me come to you. How do we encourage young African Australians to embrace the legal profession? You know, you talked about your story. They're coming from a refugee background, and there may be many such young people who may not necessarily be sure, may not think, and you know, legal studies are very, very difficult and expensive. But again, as we said earlier, there are more people, young people coming through the system. How do we encourage even more young people to go into it?
Well, you just have to have a look at myself, Kimani, Zenza, Ike, and all the African lawyers that have made it in this country. It's the legal profession is a profession of privilege because we, apart from, regardless of what we do from day-to-day basis, that is, we work firstly for ourselves. The foremost where social justice is an important element of what we do on day-to-day basis. And if you're passionate about your people, that is, if you're passionate about the African people in this country, if you're passionate about the future of the African people in this country, if you're passionate about your family, if you're passionate about the country that you now live in, that you call home, then the legal profession is the profession for you to choose, because it teaches you your rights, and not only your rights, the rights of your community, the rights of the people, of the minorities in this country. So I do really encourage young people. The legal profession gives you it's a gun, you know, it's a protection for you and your community. So if you're passionate about your community, you're passionate about your rights, your people, the minorities, the legal profession is the profession to go to, because it will arm you with whatever you need to stand up for yourself, for your family, for your community, and for the minorities in this country.
Okay, Raviro, I see actually quite a lot of young female African Australians into the legal profession, and I think that's quite encouraging. I think I even see a lot more of them than young males. Is there something there that is encouraging more young African Australian female to go into the profession, and what can we do to make that even more to increase that number?
I think it's just the desire for women, I guess more and more women wanting to help and standing for social justice and to save the community. And even when I was in law school, we actually had more females than males. I don't know what it's to do with also the population growth. There are more women than men, but really women are really coming across as really enforcing the social justice in the community and wanting to save others.
Now, Ike, I'll come to you. Do lawyers, I suppose all of us understand to some degree, we're all professionals, we understand that we're beyond our own individual goals for our career and our family and all that. We got that responsibility to project a good role model in the society. Are the African Australian lawyers sufficiently taking action to project that role model image to inspire other young people?
Sorry, the question is whether or not African Australian lawyers are doing that.
Yeah, that's right.
Look, I think to a certain degree they are. I mean, I can certainly say what I do outside of my work. I mean, I co-founded the Incubate Foundation, which is a mentoring organization with my wife, who coincidentally is also a lawyer. And we basically mentor young African Australians. As we speak, we've got a guest mentoring series, which occurs every Thursday at 6 p.m. on our Instagram handle, which is Incubate Foundation. And the next speaker is going to be Ukari Warman, who's a HR executive, and he's going to talk about job readiness and how young African Australians can prepare themselves for job interviews and getting employment. I also am a co-founder of the African Music and Cultural Festival, which has its annual festival at Fed Square every December. I also sit on the board of AIMS Australia, which is the largest refugee and new migrant settlement organisation in Australia. So this is what I guess most of us who are lawyers are inspired to do. We give back to the community because we understand that our roles, it's a role of privilege. It's a privilege to be able to be of service to the community and make a difference. So I think there are varying degrees in terms of the contribution that African lawyers make, but I think fundamentally deep down, we all know where we've come from. We all know the disadvantages that members of the community face, and we all want to do something about it.
Okay. Anybody else wants to add on this aspect of the contribution to the community? I know pretty much all of you are involved in some sort of charitable or not-for-profit endeavors and trying to give back to the community. Is there something perhaps that still needs to be done? Is there a gap that still needs to be filled?
If I can just add, I certainly agree with Ike that on an individual basis, we all try to do our best. And I think there is no real sort of coordinated in terms of an umbrella organization for African lawyers taking on that role. But that's understandable because the numbers are just growing in recent times. And as we've remarked, 20 years ago, there was only a handful of African lawyers. Now there's more and more. And I believe maybe in another 5 years or so, there will be the impetus to have that sort of organization. But certainly, I think each of us try their best to be a role model within their community and also to give back to the community. Certainly, certainly for myself, I can say that that's the position.
Yep.
Raviro, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I can also add on that to say, for us who are already in a privileged position, I guess it's part of serving the community to be mentors and offer experience, especially to the upcoming young ones that are actually graduating from law, because there are challenges to get employment out there, even to just get that work experience that's required for anyone to practice law. So there is room for improvement, and we are growing. And I must say also, having Kimani on the board right now, he has mentored part of my legal practice as well as I was coming through law. That's 6 years ago now, Kimani.
Yeah, time flies. Time flies.
Yeah, 6 years ago.
That's good. That's good. Now, we're going to take a few questions from the audience. I've got a couple for the next 10 minutes before we finish. Let me just go to this one. Femi from Perth says, "Hi guys, I want to really commend your effort. This is very informative. What is the cost implication of having a personal lawyer? I also wanted to know if any of you have connections in Perth, Western Australia. So what does it cost to have a personal lawyer?"
Yeah, I'm more than happy to answer that question. I think it's it's rather than the cost, it's the importance of having a personal lawyer, because it means you have a friend that can respond to your needs when you need that person. So, and you've got a direct contact to that person. So I think that's very important. If you have a personal lawyer, you have somebody that you can easily contact. Lawyers are extremely busy. We're very busy. But if you know a lawyer personally, it means you've got access, and access is everything. It's very important.
So how much does that cost? Will they charge you?
Well, it depends on your look. It's most of these things are negotiable. To be honest, most of these things are negotiable. If this is somebody that you've always brought work to, it's you've got personal connection. I personally treat people that I know or my friends more favorably than somebody that walks through the door for the first time, and that's a fact. That's a fact. Every lawyer here knows and understands, and every lawyer out there. So it's very important that you know a lawyer, somebody that is actively practicing. In terms of whether there's a connection, there's Savannah Legal. Savannah Legal is in Perth. The principal is Louis Christopher. So get in contact. He's a great guy, and I think that's so far as I know, that's the only person in Perth that has got the only African that I know that has their own practice.
Yeah, I can remember Louis Christopher. He was nominated for an award as part of our AfroShine Awards program last year, and yeah, he's doing a great work there. I'm not.
Clyde,
Do you guys?
If I could just add to the question that was asked. So I can talk from my own experience, and as someone that's employed by a law firm, I obviously can't have a personal, I guess, client relationship outside of my law firm. But what I often do is I often get a lot of queries from members of the community about legal matters. And I'm always more than happy to refer them on to people who I know practice in the area that they seek advice about, if they clearly don't want a personal injury matter dealt with. But and I'll also give them common sense advice, and I'll make it clear that I'm not giving them legal advice. I'm just giving them common sense advice if I think it's something that they may not need to see a lawyer about. So yeah, I'm more than happy, and I always do speak to people and refer them on to whoever I think is best able to help them in the area that they are seeking advice about.
Absolutely. Kimani, do you have anything? Sorry, Raviro, you want to say something? Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to add something like the people I've developed a relationship with. There is a personal lawyer-client relationship that is formulated there, and it's on a personal level. I've had calls from my previous clients saying, hey, I got this. Actually, there was a class action that's going on to sue the government to do with Centrelink. And he said, do you think I should join in this class action, or I should opt out? What are the advantages and disadvantages? So it's something you can call your personal lawyer, because we can have that relationship and ask general questions. And if I cannot answer it, I usually say, I think you better go and see another specialist lawyer who can answer that question. Because there's a lawyer, you cannot cover everything. There are other things where you're limited, but you do have access to other resources that you can always pay people.
Okay, but Kimani, I suppose if you're running your own law firm, then it becomes a little easier, I suppose, as opposed to what Ike has said. He can't have a relationship outside of his law firm. But if you run that whole firm, you can potentially develop some kind of personal lawyer relationship with a client, even outside of any issue or matters that they may need help with. Is that right?
Absolutely. Look, two things I want to say. in relation to referring clients to lawyers in Perth, I don't know any lawyers in Perth. I can say I've personally ran a number of family court trials there, and I've gone there for some other matters as well. But in terms of the personal relationship, I've got a lot of clients who from time to time have asked me, can you be our personal lawyer? We want to pay you some sort of retainer on an ongoing basis. And I usually say to them, look, I'm happy to be your lawyer. If you have an issue, you call me. Then we can decide what it will cost me for you to try to solve the issue. If I can't solve it, I refer you to someone. But as I said before, in terms of giving that advice, I don't charge. So this is part of what I'm saying. We have to make ourselves accessible. And that's been my policy for the last 20 years. So in terms of developing personal relationships, as I said, I pick up my phone, and if I don't, then I return the call. And look, I'm approachable in that way. So I do agree with Makear that it's important that people should have a personal lawyer, or at least someone they can go to. And that's how I see myself in terms of being a African Australian lawyer.
Okay. And perhaps there may be a little kind of a market opportunity there to find a way for those of you, at least, who are in the position to do so, to be able to offer that personal lawyer type of relationship and have some income. Makear, what do you think about that?
Of course. Obviously, lawyers work to be paid. But most importantly, what's important, and for me as a person, is what makes me happy is when I solve your problem, when I can say definitely I do have an answer for your question. So whatever transpires out of the relationship that I have with the client I think it's an advantage in a way or another. But importantly is for the community to know that we're there, we're accessible. You call me, if you write to me, if you know me on Facebook and you write to me, I'll be able to respond to you. If you're on Twitter and you contact me, I'll respond to your question. You've got my number, my practices, or you call to my reception. You leave your number, I'll be able to respond to you. So all these things are there, and it's very important that we as a community do understand that lawyers, it's about the time that we demystify the legal practice. That legal practice is all about the community. It's about social justice. It's about availability to your people. So if I can't assist an African to overcome a hurdle, then I may not be of any use to my community. So I think let's be open to each other, and we're just normal brothers and sisters, and whichever way you want to approach us. We should be of assistance in one way or another.
All right. Before we conclude, actually, let me see if I have another question. It's more about asking your contact. Some people are wanting to have your contact so that they may eventually make contact with you. And if you allow us, we'll be able to share that. I want you to kind of say your last message to the community in relation to this whole conversation that is part of the Law Week, and what you would like to be able to communicate. We'll start with you, Raviro.
I would say seek legal advice. If you're not sure, you probably are right. Go and seek legal advice before you take anything that matters in your life.
And let me just remind, if there's anything that you want to offer to the audience, perhaps contact you for some limited free legal advice, go ahead and do that. Kimani, what have you got to say?
What I can say is anyone in the community that has an issue and wants to contact me can call me on my mobile phone. I always make myself available. And look, I'm here to assist in whatever way is possible. I went into the law initially because I wanted to be able to protect myself and understand how it operates. And from that motivation, very quickly it went into trying to achieve justice for others. And that's what I work for, and that's what I live for. And I enjoy it the same as what I did 24 years ago.
That's good. Ike?
Yeah, look, I think, as I said earlier, it's a privilege to be able to make a difference to people's lives. And I think it's even a greater privilege to make a difference to members of your own community who need it most. And I, like Kimani and everyone on the panel, am available to give advice if it's in the area that I specialize in, any personal injury claims. But if I don't specialize in it, I'll refer you on to people who I know can assist you. So more than happy to assist in any way I can.
Yeah, Makaya?
Yes, I do echo the sentiments of my colleagues on the panel, but most importantly, do approach us, as I said, did intimate before, where your brothers, where your sisters. We care about your needs. We care about what challenges that you need to overcome. So be open, even if you have to hop on Google, you don't know where I am, or Kimani, or Ike, or Nzenza. And there are so many other African lawyers out there. Look out for us. We will respond to you. We are a new and emerging community. We've got your back as much as you've got our backs as well. And let's just contact each other. We do have solutions to our own problems.
Now I see a comment and a question about mentorship, but we're coming to the end of the show. Maybe just one thing, and this is actually a recurring request from many of members of our community who are asking many of our guests whether they would assist with any type of mentoring. I know, like Ike has mentioned, there's some sort of platform, the Incubate Foundation, where you are actually doing that already. I was wondering whether any of you would want to volunteer maybe an hour a month or whatever frequency where we can actually put our platform available for online mentoring of some sort as part of that educational process to help younger people, the younger generation, and the broader member of the community to address some of the issues that they may have. Is that something that you're prepared to do?
Oh,
Absolutely.
Yep,
Absolutely.
Yeah. Actually, it was just for COVID-19 that has stopped my practice, because we were actually looking to start mentoring some of the young African lawyers who are going through uni right now. And so it is something that's quite sentimental to our practice, because to help others. So definitely, yes, I would say a big yes.
So yes for Raviro. It's a yeah.
yes,
Anybody?
Yes,
Go ahead.
me as well.
Yes,
Yeah,
from all
yes
of
for
us.
that.
And
Yes, from all of you.
as Raviro said, I think there hasn't been a time where I haven't had some student working with me. At the moment, I have one young Somali lawyer. He's been with me for about 2 years, and that's always been the case consistently. And I enjoy when I see they then move on, they open their own businesses and flourish. And that's a great thing. And I feel that in some part I've contributed to that development. So I'm always prepared to give back in that sense.
Absolutely.
And if I may acknowledge you on the screen, Kimani, I've come through your hands as well. And today I'm practicing on my own, and I'm doing very well.
That's great.
That's very good.
yes.
That's a nice way to. That's a nice way to end this. So definitely, we will get back to you. We're setting up the framework for some online mentoring through this platform, so you can reach out on so many people. Remember the people who are watching from Perth, from Sydney, from Adelaide, and they can still benefit from your knowledge and your experience and advice. So we will be contacting you when that is ready, so you can see how you can contribute to the best of your ability. Then I want to say thank you to every one of you, because as I said earlier, I know you're such busy people, a lot of things to do, but you've given your time to educate the community as part of this law week. So thank you very much for that, and I hope to be able to see you sometime soon. We may organize another show where we will go on a one-on-one and maybe in your special area and all that sort of thing. And we'll contact you very soon. I hope you again be available for online show. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
for-
All right. Have a good evening,
Yes.
ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.